What's up, Cash Flow fam? Maryjean, your host, and I'm here with my co-host, the wonderful Matthew Munson. As a reminder, we like to keep things chill, relatable, keep you guys learning and growing, and hopefully just get inspired. If that's all we can do, inspire you. We have an awesome topic to go over today. Something that I'm personally going through in my business right now, and wish I would have dealt with it more on the front end and not a reaction. I'm kind of reacting to stuff going on instead of being proactive. And Mun's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to stuff like this. He's kind of who's taught me on things to not do and to do. So yeah, Mun, if you want to kind of give them the rundown of kind of what we'll go over, and then we'll kind of kick it off from there.
Absolutely. Thank you for that great intro, MJ. Yeah, just like she said, we're going to be going over a super important topic. We're going to really be stressing the importance of your core four and going over some kind of problems that you could face if you hire them a little bit too late.
Yeah, and just like Mun said, making sure that we're doing it ahead of time and when to get them and, what to do yourself and not do yourself. Perfect example. I've been in business 4 years now. I've been handling all the bookkeeping, kind of playing the accountant role. And that's not what I specialize in. So we're doing a little bit of a book cleanup, and we did hire a company to come in and do a lot of this for us, which I wish I would have just did it sooner. And I think maybe, and a lot of people might relate to this, maybe when you're first starting out, you think like, oh, I don't need that. How hard can it be? It's just a simple saving my receipts, tracking my expenses, things of that nature, right? But I think as you continue to grow, and maybe if you're just cutting lawns on the side, do you need an accountant? Probably not, right? But if you grow a big lawn care business, a big fencing company, a big cleaning business, yes, you want to have that. So I'm not saying just because you're starting this small little side hustle or whatever that is that you need to go hire an accountant. Mun may have a different perspective on that, but then you run into the issue like I am. I never expected our business to grow where it went. And now it's kind of like, shoot, we need to go back. We need to play catch up. And I'm sure you can how do you feel about someone, if they're just doing something smaller, side hustle? Do you recommend they get an accountant, or when do you think someone should grab one?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, I think that once your business transfers from being a side hustle to an actual business, I think is the great time. So even if you're not making a lot of revenue, I don't think it should be like a revenue driven goal. Once you start getting staff and all that stuff, I think it's definitely a great time to hire one, just because there's payments that need to go to the IRS. So you're going to need your tax guy and your bookkeeper to keep everything clean and correct, in case, God forbid, an audit comes. Keeping those up to date from the beginning is going to, one, make it a lot cheaper. And if you look at it like that, you'll never really regret it. And it's going to keep you guys all on one even keel, right? You're always going to know where your business is, your profit and loss statements. You're going to be being able to go over quarterly projections and what you need to pay. And I mean, it's so useful. So as soon as you start hiring people in your business, I think it's a great time to get an accountant is what I would recommend.
Yeah, and I do like how you mentioned the revenue. So, taking your side hustle to a business where you're going to hire. And I didn't look at it like this before until and I know you kind of have been on my butt about getting an accountant. And I kept saying I'm going to get one. And then I thought I'm just categorizing expenses. Well, no, heck no. That's what it was in the beginning when I was kind of doing the cleaning and didn't really have staff and things of that nature. Someone said to me the other day, we want your books to be perfect. And I kind of joked back, as good as they can be. And he said, no, perfect. Because when you go to sell this business, if your books aren't in order and you can't really account for your profit and your expenses, no one's going to buy it. And I was like, oh, wow. I never even thought that far ahead of selling my business, but who knows? Everything's for sale at the right number, right?
Right. And another thing is a lot, and that's a very common thing. Like a lot of people don't go into it with the mindset of, is this going to be sellable or anything like that, or building a business to be sellable. But at the end of the day, your business is going to change hands some type of way, whether you sell it, whether you just forcefully close, whether you hand it over to your relatives or your children. So your business is going to go to someone else. So now, are you trying to give them a mess? Are you trying to give them something that's actually structurally sound? And to piggyback on what they had told you, I mean, if you go to sell this business, one, it may not sell, or two, the other alternative is it sells a lot less than you actually think it's worth, right?
Yeah.
And just by taking these actionable steps up front and making sure that you're doing everything correct is going to make sure that it sells at a higher multiple than if it would have if you didn't have all your books in order and if you're the only operator in the business. So a bunch of key factors can go into how much you can get for your business. A lot of people would be surprised how much those little things really impact that value.
Yeah, for sure. And I was actually, as we were sitting down and like interviewing accountants, I was actually shocked at how cheap it was. And not that it's cheap, but like how inexpensive. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, it's going to be 1,000 a month, 1,200 a month, and maybe yeah, eventually it'll get somewhere like that as I grow. But when someone said 300, I was like, I've been doing this crap for 300 bucks a month to save me 300.
Right.
Like what? And I
Yeah.
don't know what I had no idea what I was doing. I did my best. Luckily, we did hire a company that is going to do a lot more for us. It is $2,000 a month, but luckily it includes, book cleanup, making sure we're charging correctly. And I don't know if like regular accountants do that. Do they go over your and things of that nature?
They do to a certain extent. It depends on what kind of service that you hired it from. So a standard bookkeeper is just going to categorize all your transactions and then be doing your profit and loss statement and get your balance sheet in order. But I personally do the job costing myself. So I got a spreadsheet that I created and I just put everything in there from what we sold the job at to what our actual cost was, what our labor cost was, what our COGS. If you don't know what that is, it's cost of goods sold.
Yeah, and guys, don't feel bad if you didn't know that because I just learned that like a week ago. Okay. And I've gotten by okay. So like it's nice that and I wish I would have known or maybe paid more attention to this or I didn't know what I didn't know. And I kind of just ran with it, which has been, pretty in my favor, but
Yeah, you've gotten lucky.
I got very lucky, and I always say that's because of the person I am. Do good things will come back to you. And I had you as like mentoring me through this. I had a few other people that have been doing this that gave me little tips and tricks here. And, I'll never forget the night you and I sat down probably till like 2 a.m. and went over like what we should be charging per hour for the
Oh
cleaners
yeah.
to go out based on, all the overhead expenses plus COGS, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't understand the difference and understanding how to bill correctly. And that's another big problem that a lot of businesses have. And unfortunately, why a lot of businesses go under is because they don't understand what they actually need to charge. They only try to win work around the area. So, if you're charging what everybody else charges, well then hey, that's a very risky and kind of reckless way to do things. You need to figure out exactly what your numbers are and
Yes.
what it costs for you to run your business, and then you need to charge accordingly.
Yes. And don't get discouraged too, because, like, in my expertise and what we do is we are a legitimate business. We have employees, we have insurance, we have work comp, we pay our staff more than any other cleaning company in the area. So when I lose bids, I just lost a bid to a company. They told the place they were a company. We were at like 250 a clean, and they were at 120 a clean.
Wow.
And they're like, you are double the price. And I was like, well, one, I know why I'm double the price. One, because I'm probably better. And two, because that's a cleaning lady. You just hired a cleaning lady, right? And for her, great. That's her side hustle, but if she ever wants to grow, whoever that may be, I don't know who it was, but if they ever want to grow, the price that she's charging her 20 to 25 an hour is going to be crazy when she has to actually account for everything that goes into a business, right?
Yeah, charging that low, I mean, it's going to force her to stay just a cleaning lady, similar to like
Yeah.
my industry where you got handymen that can come up and do that kind of work, and it's a lot cheaper because their overhead is virtually non-existent, right? It's
Yeah.
just them, the truck, maybe a little helper here or there, but that forces you to not be able to grow because if you
Yes.
don't charge enough to pay your people right, one, you're going to have turnover rate, which is going to be crazy, which is going to mess up your schedule. Two, you're not going to have enough money to actually save and grow because you're charging rock bottom prices. So what I would have asked that company, and I would have said, hey, you know what? That's great that you found a cheaper quote. And I understand getting the best deal is probably very important to you. But I wonder exactly what she had to sacrifice to make it that cheap.
Mm.
Were all these things included? I just want to make sure that we're comparing these apples to apples. And then
Yeah.
if everything was included and she was able to do that, say, hey, you know what? Good luck. Sounds like you got a good price. If something doesn't work out, I would love to work with you in the future.
Yeah.
And you guys already know what my rate is, you know. So just having the confidence to be able to turn away work. And I think that's a big problem a lot of people have when they first get started too, is they're afraid to lose jobs. If you're selling 100% of every job you go out on, you're way too cheap. There's
Yes.
something wrong. So you need to hear a lot of no's to really know and understand what your goals are in your business. You can't just price it based off of what the industry is charging. I think that's very important. I know when I first got it started, my partner, he was the cheap guy, right? He was doing it, but he was doing great work, but for rock bottom. He would literally, hey, what quote do you got? I'll beat it,
Yeah.
And when I came in, I said, no, 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 we can't do that. Your work is way too good and we're selling it way too cheap. And eventually we're going to get out a race to the bottom, competing each other for the lowest bid. And then you're out of business because eventually there's going to be no room for profit. And then you're pretty much working for nothing.
And that's something else to like comment on right there is everyone's looking at like how much revenue are we bringing in? No, 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 no. We don't care about the revenue. How much profit are you putting in your pocket? And I
Exactly.
didn't follow that too closely. Again, I got lucky. And I think that's because we sat down that night till 2 a.m. And figured out how much should I charge an hour. And then I kind of still don't have that down pat. I just kind of guess, like based on best judgment, how long are we going to be here? That's your price. Usually 85 to 90% accurate. But my point is, yes, having the revenue is cool. It's cool to say, my business does this much a year. Okay, but what are you putting in your pocket? Like, are you tracking your expenses? Like, just because you won the job, if you're not really making any money on it, like, and are you going to do a good job if you're not making enough money on it? Probably not.
Yeah. And eventually it'll be hard to be consistent with it
Right.
because, and this brings me back to, I know this is a little off topic, but with real estate, like I've always said, I think that there's a lot of accidental slumlords out there, and that's because of that same exact thing, right? These people are not raising their prices, right? They're keeping the same prices so they can keep the same customers. And in this case, in real estate, they're keeping the same tenants because they're paying on time every time. They don't want to deal with any kind of turnover. But what they don't realize is that as inflation goes up and the price and cost of living and everything goes up, if the rent is at that same price, now your landlord is now paying higher insurance costs, higher maintenance costs. Anything that gets fixed, he's going to have to pay even more money. The labor is going up. So all the expenses that he would naturally incur being a landlord are now raising, but he's still only getting the same amount of money. So what is that eating into? His profit. If there was very little profit there to begin with, well, now he's almost at negative. And that's when a lot of, slumlords are born because they can't afford to come out and help you. They may want to. There's probably a lot of good people out there that are just forced into that. And that's where you get tired landlords as well. And they just want to sell it because they're sick of dealing with it, because they didn't want that uncomfortable conversation of, hey, we're raising the rents every single year. But the problem is, I think a lot of them do is they don't articulate it the right way to the tenants. And they're just like, hey, rent increase coming. They should be like, hey, we're raising the rent every single year. But what we're also doing is improving stuff. So at the end of the year before the rent increase, I want to know, is there anything in there that we need to touch up? Is there anything that we need to fix or address? Because I want to make sure that you guys are living comfortable and everything is good and in working order here. Right. So a lot of people just throw that rental raise on them and then just say, hey, take it or leave it. Well, that's not the way to do it, because at the end of the day, this is a people business and you got to make sure you're taking care of people. So just like you said, maybe that lady can get by it on, charging 125, but how long can she maintain that? Right. Because
Right.
eventually she's just going to price herself out of the market and she's not even going to be, any of your competition.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of upset. And I don't know, maybe I take it too personal, but I'm kind of like, that's kind of upsetting to consider yourself a business. Cause then it's like, to me, it's like devaluing what we do, really. Like, not even devaluing. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but it's like, you can't call I mean, I guess you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, but it's like, yeah, why is there such a why was I double her? Well, because I'm a legitimate business. And if she gets sick, who's coming? I got 9 people behind me. You know what I mean? If that person can't come, then the next person, and the next person. But yeah, making sure off the jump that you're charging what you should be charging is very important.
And don't ever lower your prices.
Yeah,
Don't ever
gosh,
do
I've made that mistake.
it.
Well, do you ever think there's a time to lower it? So, like, I was, as you know, I was in a big negotiations with And usually no one ever negotiates with me, but I was in negotiations for an account. I mean, do you think there's ever a time to negotiate that? I don't know if I felt like little fish against big shark and I was a little intimidated, but
Right.
the lady did tell me from the jump, we're going to negotiate. I bumped it up a little bit. I still didn't get it quite where I wanted it. But do you ever feel there's a good time to negotiate?
I think there's time to negotiate, but not lower the price. Because if the expectation has been set and it's been met, why is my price going down? I should be rewarded for doing exactly what I said and also doing it at a high level and being there to respond to any of those problems. Start, and this is how I always pitch it to my clients, right? Any client that ever asks for a discount, hey, I would love to save you some money on this project. However, there's no upcharge or anything like that on the materials that we order. That discount that you're asking for is actually just going to come straight out of my crew's pocket, right? And so when I start discounting labor, what's going to happen is my guys are going to feel they're going to feel the need to rush, right? Now we're sacrificing quality and safety. And those are just two things that we're not willing to negotiate here. So if you need that discount that bad, I would say either one, we're not the company for you, or two, please wait until you can afford to pay full price so you can get that full experience, because I don't want to diminish the experience that we're going to get or the quality of the cleans and stuff like that, what we're going to do for you just to save you a couple bucks, because really you you don't really realize the cost of getting that discount, especially in a business like yours where it's a recurring service. If I discount you and now every single clean is going to be rushed, well, now my quality is going to start to diminish. Now I'm going to have there's a lot of costs that come on both sides of it, right? So in my industry, in the fence and deck world, if I were to sacrifice that, now the client, they just think, oh, hey, I'm getting a good deal. But in reality, what is that going to cost you over time if you choose the cheaper guy, right? Because he doesn't have it built in to come back and stand behind his work. He doesn't have the money to be able to come back and rebuild if something went wrong or replace a whole section is something that we do. Now, granted, we do it right the first time, so we don't have to. But in case there is ever any kind of problems, you can ask any clients that we've ever dealt with. We've addressed it and we've addressed it immediately, and no matter what it costs. And I just chalk it up as a cost of doing business. We're going to win some, we're going to lose some, but we're going to always average to be ahead.
Right.
So if you're not charging accordingly, you can't do that. So I honestly, I don't think there's ever a time to lower your prices. I think you should always be raising them, especially when you're delivering an exceptional service.
Yeah, so this was like early, this was before any cleaning had begun. This was in the early stage, but I wish I would have. It's crazy how we evolve and how we build confidence as we go. Like me back, this was a year ago we negotiated, and for 4 months we went at it. I have way more confidence in myself now that if we were to sit back down, it would be a totally different story. So I guess for me, it's like I'm taking it as a big lesson learned. Luckily we're not losing money, but a lesson learned for the next time. Like, of course I'm more. I should be more. The company you have now is crap. You've said it a
Right.
million times to me. Of course I'm more, you know? So
Yep.
yeah, it's crazy.
Always make them understand. And sometimes they'll go with it, sometimes they won't. But always break it down so they understand the price versus the cost. The price is what you're paying today. So if this is how much it's paying, if it's $250 a clean, hey, well, that's your price, right? But what is the cost? And that's something that a lot of people don't think about. And that's the cost of either choosing the right or wrong person, and that if they're using the right or wrong materials, which in your trade, if you're using the wrong chemicals and stuff like that, how much could that cost the client?
A lot.
Right? If the products are not working correctly, or if they're not doing what they need to, or if they have a bad reaction to something they have there, or they create a slip hazard or something, you just never know. So in my industry, if we chose the wrong, cheapest products, well, they're going to fail over time, and we know that. But you have to be such a professional that you're saying, you know what? I'm only going to take this job if it's going to help the person. If I know deep down in my heart that this is actually going to hurt them by giving them this discount, I'm not willing to do that. Just like parenting, right? There's going to be things that we have to crack down on our kids and be uncomfortable. Right? We're going to have to discipline them. We're going to have to do that stuff because we know that in the end, this is what they need. In the moment, it hurts. Like, damn, I don't want to hurt my kid. Or I don't want to see him grounded or not. I don't want to see him doing this, but I don't want to see him in a prison cell. I don't want to see him in toxic relationships. I don't want to see him creating these bad habits and taking this out into the workforce and being around other people's, children and stuff like that. I always just say like, hey, as a business owner, we have to make those hard calls. And that's unfortunately is one of them. So we have to look out for the client regardless. And I think if you go into that with that mindset, you are going to lose a couple, but you're going to win all the right ones.
Yeah, and I think this also, like the conversation we're kind of having now, if you go back to I think it was the last video, a mentor. Had I
Yeah.
probably hired the mentor, I just hired, not the mentor, but they're like a do it for you cleaning business, right? If I had hired them sooner, because now he's going to help me with that now and how to maybe try to go back and maybe get more money or whatnot. But had I hired mentors early on, had I hired the right, people, the core four to have in my pocket, then would things have been differently? Luckily, absolutely. And I just keep saying, luckily, it wasn't too bad of a mistake. Not that it was a mistake. I learned a ton, right? And luckily, the learning through that didn't cost me any money. I am making money. I just don't think it's like where it really should be. So I'm just trying to view it as a lesson learned and probably do things a little differently.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know I was kind of getting you on you about the accountant thing, just because if you're not an expert at it, why are you doing it? You
Right.
have the money to pay them, so why are you doing it? Whether you can or not is not the point, right? There's plenty of things I can do in my business,
Yeah.
but I refuse to, right? Because that's not where my skill set is best used, right? So
Right.
just like on the last episode, we kind of talked about it, and you know, when you start doing things that are outside of your skill set, it's almost a disservice to your business, because now you're taking the energy away from the part that you have your superpower, right? And you're taking that away. Like your superpower is, hey, your sales, you're good. You're making sure that quality control is 100%. It's top notch, right? The attention to detail is there. So when you start worrying about the accountant stuff and you start worrying about sending texts or sending emails or something like
Scheduling.
that, it's taking away from all that the great qualities that you have that no one else can do.
Right.
Somebody easily can do all those other tasks. But the little specialty, the thing that God gave you, you're wasting that energy by getting pulled in so many directions. And I'm sure that there's been nights where you lost sleep and you were stressed out about the finances when you could
Oh,
have
for sure.
easily, for a couple $100, hired that accountant, took away all those worries, and allowed them to do all the work. So
Yeah.
the peace
And
of mind
that's
is
for
priceless.
sure. And then I think of like, that's what they're charging me for what we're doing now. Imagine what it would have been early on.
Man.
But yes, guys, don't definitely. So it was funny because when I was sitting down with the accountants, I was like, whoa. So maybe we should tell people like what's normal about an accountant. Cause like I walked into one of their offices and paper everywhere, books everywhere, dust, although I'm a cleaner or not a cleaner, but that's like my expertise. So I'm like looking around, I'm like, do I really want these guys doing my books? They can't even keep their desk organized. But that's
Right.
pretty common, right?
Yeah, and just look at it. The same thing we just talked about. They're good at doing actual numbers and working on the books. They're not good at organizing, not good at cleaning the place. That's why they're probably hiring that out, or
They're
that's
not.
slacking because they're not putting that time into doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now the books and stuff like that pretty much is probably all done on the computer nowadays anyway. So they just have files that are stacked around and they're probably dealing with so many clients. But yeah, I ran into multiple accountants that are like that. It does look like it's kind of unruly in there sometimes. But as long as all the numbers are adding up, as long as we're going over stuff, and as long as they're good about their business, that's the most important thing. But to answer your question, I think there's a lot of confusion between accountant and bookkeeper and
Yes.
then tax strategist, right? Those three things are totally different positions and three different expertises, right? One, like the bookkeeper, they're going to do is they're going to reconcile everything that you have inside of, your QuickBooks or whatever, your bank statements or however you're transferring this information to them. For me, I have QuickBooks. My accountant has access to that, and then he reconciles everything, categorizes it all for us, and then now you can have an accurate profit and loss and balance sheet and stuff like that. As far as the accountant, they're going to be working on your books, working on your taxes, working on getting your quarterly payments out to the IRS and all the payments that need to go out for that. A lot of time the accountants can also handle the payroll for you as well. And then there's tax strategists where you're actually meeting with this person to strategize how you're going to, limit using legal loopholes your tax bill, right? So whatever that tax liability is, they're going to help you kind of get that down, kind of structure, do some projecting there where they think your business may be at the end of the year so that you can start getting those write-offs and stuff like that and planning that out ahead of time. Big differences in those three, but they're very commonly in the same building, all right, or wearing the same hat or in the same office. So just to make sure that you know what you're looking for. If you just need somebody to keep the books, cool, get a bookkeeper. If you need somebody to do both, get an accountant. They can do bookkeeping and on the accountant. And a lot of people do act as both, but a lot of times the tax strategist isn't your accountant. It's somebody you need to hire out. and that's somebody you don't want to be cheap with. So make
Yeah.
sure that your tax strategist is someone that you're paying well because they're going to save you a lot of money. Now, just imagine, and this is one thing I had met with this guy and we were talking about business and he was so hell bent on like staying away from like high paid tax strategists. And I said, well, how much did you pay to the IRS? You know, and he said 43 grand. And I was like, 40 grand? I said, imagine if you would have hired this guy because he was complaining that the guy was like 7,500. I said, if you would have paid him 7,500 and he could have got your tax bill down to zero, you don't think that would have been a good investment to your business? He's like, oh, well, I never thought about that. I was like, yeah, well, because you're not looking at what it's going to cost you to not have them. You're only looking at it, hey, what's my today cost? What's my price
Right.
today? And that's the biggest problem, right? The price versus cost. You got to keep that in mind. Yes, the price is 7,500, but what is the value you're getting? What is the cost of not doing business with this guy? Well, you just paid 43 grand and that's how much it was. So to avoid paying 7,500, you paid 43,000. That was a horrible business decision.
Crazy.
Now, luckily, he's got the advice and he's actually hiring somebody. So I'm hoping that his tax bill is a lot lower this year. But it's a big misconception, and people get really cheap in that, and that's not where you want to be cheap. You don't want to be cheap with your tax strategist, your accountant, your lawyer, none of those people, because that's what's really going to hurt your business.
When do you think a business would need a tax strategist? I don't know. I think we're probably still too small for that, right?
I don't think so. I mean, what'd you pay in taxes last year?
$600.
Oh, okay. Well, depending on what year you are in your business, because
Yeah.
actually, obviously, after year 5, you can't take any paper loss. But
Right.
I would say now would be a great time, right?
Okay.
Because again, and this is not saying anything bad about anybody or any accountants out there, right? There's a lot of accountants out there that really don't know the tax game like that, right? They can look it up and they have access to that. But there's thousands and thousands of pages of this tax code. So there's no way that nobody knows every little piece of the tax code. And if they do, they're going to be so expensive you can't afford it, right? But the ones that do, what you want to do is work with them. They're a member of your team. And a lot of people just think, oh, here, I'll just pour all this and drop all these paperwork on their deck and hey, good luck, figure it all out for me. Well, that's not how it is. This is a member of your team now. That's why it's a core 4, because they're a part of your business now. This is a business partner. So we need to treat them as such and be talking to them regularly, telling them what you're doing. Hey, telling them what your plans. They're going to be able to help guide you. Because another thing that I see a lot of people doing is they'll go in there and they'll say, they'll give them all the stuff and then expect the accountant to like find all these massive write-offs. Well, that's not their job. Their job is to accurately document all the information you give them and then file those taxes, right? Their job isn't to go out and try to get the least amount of money paid to the IRS. That's not their job, right? They're not incentivized to do that. But you can bring in ideas, you can bring in solutions or things that you found on your own or research, or that's why proximity is power, because being around other people that are aware of some of these tax strategies that you may not know, now he can tell you, hey, are you taking advantage of this? Oh, no, let me ask my accountant. So don't think that maybe the accountant is inept or anything like that. It's just they don't know every single rule, every single law, every single loophole. It's impossible to know all that stuff. So just keep that in mind that they're a partner. You should be working with them and not just giving it, just throwing all this crap on their table and expecting them, to make something beautiful out of it.
Right. And to kind of comment on that too is what we were saying, the value that they bring, right? So like that guy rather paid more money into the IRS than to have paid it up front. And another thing
Crazy.
I was going to comment on was I probably was making way less revenue for my taxes last year because when my guy that does my taxes saw the end of the year money last year and he's like, hey, start putting up this amount of money every month. Where a tax strategist is going to be like, well, yeah, put that up, but let's find where we can take that money and invest it back into your business. So my tax guy, again, is completely different than what an accountant would do, which really usually the accountants can do your taxes for you. And probably
Yep.
when you hit a certain level, well, I mean, I know
Yeah.
we kind of view that a little differently, but the guy that was doing my taxes was fine for the last few years. But is he probably going to do them at the end of this year? No.
And at the end of the day, your taxes is your responsibility. So if you give them information, they're going to run with it. So there is some people that will bend the rules to get you better returns, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well, because sometimes if it's too good to be true, it is, right? If we're not having tax bill after tax bill after tax bill, and we haven't done any strategic buying, but then there could be something wrong. There could be some kind of like fibbing of the records, and that will come bite you in the butt if you get, you know, flagged for that audit. So keep in mind that we want to make sure that we're doing honestly and strategically, opposed to like, telling little white lies and stuff like that. Because there's a lot of that going on. I've seen it happen, and people really get burned, because then if you do get caught in that, then you're going to be required to pay all the taxes and all the fees on top of that, and penalties and fines, and it's no good. And guess who has to eat that? You, not the accountant. Okay, because the accountant's going to say, well, hey, that's what they told me. I just wrote down what they said. They said it, they had 100 grand in gas this month. That's what I put. So
I don't
it's
know if
left to
anyone would be that stupid, right?
man. There's some people that put some dumb stuff.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy.
100 grand in
But
gas. Jesus.
I mean,
That would be
just anything
totally
like
nuts.
people, and then a lot of people, they'll go out and buy trucks, right? They'll buy. That's a huge thing in a contractor thing. Oh, I'm going to buy a new truck to get rid of the tax bill. Well, and this is the part where the tax strategist comes in, because you shouldn't just be buying things to get the tax write-off, right? If they can't make your business more money. So if that brand new $80,000 truck, well, yeah, it looks cool and you can throw a wrap on it, but is it actually making your business any more money? The
No.
answer is no. Well, then that's still a bad investment, even though you're saving the money for the taxes, right? Because we want to be buying things that are continually to, make our business grow and expand and make
Yes.
more money, not just a liability. So be careful when you're doing that stuff. A lot of people, they want everything brand new, and they go about it that way, and they ended up losing a lot of money, and not getting a lot of value out of it. So just be careful with that as well. Just don't buy stuff to buy it. Buy things that are going to boost your business and increase sales. Like I always say, is a great investment is at the end of the year, if you got a big tax bill, pour it all into marketing, hire a marketing agency, and just go crazy with Google ads and local service ads. You'll blow up.
Yeah.
And it's money that you don't have to pay in. And just like you said, the right person is going to guide you of how to stack from day one. Right?
Right.
So that's another key thing, is just always plan to pay it, and then be strategic of how you can, lower that tax liability so that you're not hit with that huge bill at the end of the year. But if you are, you got the money. So, or you got the money to hire a better tax strategist.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because I have in my head to add in like more carpet cleaning and window cleaning. So I already got my eye on this
Right.
$3,000 cool carpet cleaner that is like totally like top notch. That will be where I will use mine if we go that route. And then the other thing that you said that I wanted to comment on, because I say it all the time to Justin, is I'd rather have it than not have it. So yeah, putting it up, and that is to reference to anything. I'm trying to think the last time we were going somewhere and he said, do we need this? And I said, probably not, but I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Right.
So think of it like that as far as putting money up.
And you can set all that money aside, and if you didn't have anything else to do with it, take your team on a company retreat. Like take them somewhere nice, do a little bonding, do some culture building with your team. Maybe throw like a 4th of July picnic and rent a bounce house and let your team and their family come and meet, and everybody, because that culture goes a long way, and it really helps people stay, because management is the number one reason, not pay, that people leave their positions. So making sure that you're being friendly with these people, appreciating them. Like I know every single time I see any of my team members' wives or girlfriends, I am just bigging up like they're Superman. Like, man, thank you so much for sharing them with us. Like, I can't tell you how much we appreciate all his hard work. This dude is the most dedicated. Like I want to make them feel like Superman in front of their families, right? Because I do appreciate them, and our businesses are nothing without our team members. So that is super important.
Seriously. I think about mine that just make my life 10 times easier, and every day I'm telling them how great they are. What can I do to make your life easier? How could I be better? Do you guys have suggestions? You guys are there day in and day out at these facilities. You're there actually doing the work. So like, how
Yep.
can I make your life easier? Or if you feel that you may know a better way, let me know and we'll sit down and talk about it. But that's huge. I'd like
Yeah.
to think every time I see my staff, I ask them, how is everything? Is everything okay? Anything I could do better? Like, what do you need from me? Any suggestions?
Yep. Becoming a great leader, and that's really what it is. You're gonna have to lead people and be like a servant leader, and really be helping them out, and that's things that I'm even learning more now. Like I thought I was pretty good, but now I'm learning how to be even better, how to be this next level leader where I can help empower people and make people really feel truly wanted and
Yeah.
appreciated. And before we get off the tax thing, I just want to do one more thing because there's a huge misconception of write-offs. So I wanted to touch base on this because I hear
Sure.
this all the time and people just don't have it right. When we're talking about write-offs, it isn't that you go and spend 50 grand and the government's going to give you a $50,000 check back. Okay. What you need to understand is when you're in business, you are going to pay taxes. Okay. So what our job is, and when we're getting write-offs is, so say if you make 100 grand and you're paying 30% tax, right? You owe 30 of that to Uncle Sam. Now with COGS and overhead and all that stuff like that, it's going to start to lower that 30 grand, right? Okay. So we're going to start lowering, and that's what we're doing. We're buying things to limit that liability, but you're not getting a refund check out of it. This isn't money you just go spending. They're going to cut you a check back. And I hear so many people say that, and it's just like, no, that is so wrong. I think they're misinterpreting write-off and reimbursement.
I'll never forget the day the lady at the last place I got the contract, she looked out for me. Like, she's no longer there, and I still talk to her every day. I say to her all the time, like, if I ever get big enough, I'm hiring you. But I'll never forget the time I sent something off and I put girls, and she called me. She's like, change that and put staff members.
Right.
But our
Yeah.
staff is usually at the same location. It's rare that they have to go from one place to the next. But maybe that, I don't know. Do you think a cleaning company would ever need vehicles? I guess for advertisement, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's just some strategic ways to use it. If you're using a vehicle, but now you can get all the benefits. You can get the write-off for the vehicle, for the mileage and all that stuff, where you can't collect any of those on the other side if your girls are just doing it on their own. So I mean, there definitely is benefits from it. Wrapping it, that's another expense that you can get to kind of get it down, brand awareness. So I definitely think there's definitely some benefits in it for sure. It really kind of all depends, because you just don't know everybody's business model.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of companies out there with wrap vehicles and all this cool stuff, wrap trailers. They look in the part, but they're broke.
Yeah.
But they're check to check. So don't get over leveraged. Don't go out there and get a whole bunch of notes and stuff like that. Work with your tax strategist on this to buy strategically so you can increase revenue for your business and also limit the tax liability as much as you can. Get as close to zero as possible. Okay. There's going to be years you have to pay, but limiting it, right? That's the only thing, is that money is going to go somewhere, right? So if you owe the government 30 grand, well, 30 grand is going somewhere. It's not staying in your account. So the best way to help that out is to put that money into something that'll make your business grow. Like I said, marketing is the number one thing. Do some direct mail marketing, do some radio advertising, sponsor some teams, do some things that are going to generate more income and more visibility for your business at the very least, because you're giving 30% to Uncle Sam if you don't.
Right.
And he didn't do nothing. He didn't do a darn thing for your business. He didn't help you get more business. He didn't do anything. So why they should be rewarded for that? I'm not with that at all. But I'm definitely with doing things by the books and hiring the right people to allow you to do that and take advantage of some of those loopholes is what we're recommending.
Isn't it crazy how the tables have turned? Think of us like back in the day. Like, I was willing to break some rules and some laws and bend and do all this, and now it's like, nope.
Yeah.
It's just crazy how things change, and you've came a long way. I love it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. When you have nothing to lose, it's a lot easier to be a little bit more risky. But
Yes.
like you said, when the tables turn and now you've elevated and stuff like that, it's time to start thinking differently. Because now the biggest thing for me as well is not only is myself and my family dependent on this, but now I have a full team and their families that are dependent on this. So if the business doesn't work, or we get hit by something where it cripples us or bankrupts us or something like that, not only am I out the money and my family out the income, right? I can start another business. I'll be good. But now my team is screwed. Now their Christmases, their birthdays, the things that they were counting on that they had no involvement in, right? Because of my negligence has now cost them their position. And that's just not something I'm willing to risk, So I'm doing everything by the book, making sure we're doing good, taking care of our people, taking care of our expenses, taking care of any kind of bills that we have, because I want to give them that security.
Yeah, it goes much deeper than just us and our family.
Exactly.
Well, guys, I hope you learned a lot. I know I did. I'm actually going through this. Don't be like me. Don't wait and react to things going on in the business. Be proactive. If you need help finding a good accountant, reach out to Matt. Do your research, interview them, right? You want to make sure everything's going to work with them. They're the ones you want to work with. If you need a bookkeeper, the same thing. But yeah, if you guys have any more questions on this, drop it in the comments. Let us know what you thought.
And one quick thing, I know that we talked a lot about businesses that really need an accountant and stuff like that and a bookkeeper. If you're on the smaller side, I don't want you to feel like we're just kind of leaving you out. What I recommend is just getting QuickBooks, because then you can do it yourself. It's going to have a little bit more learning curve, but they have plenty of videos on YouTube, and you can even pay for the higher plan. And it has, like, you can ask an accountant actual
Yes.
questions to kind of help you guide you through that. So if you're that little where you're like, I really can't afford that, I don't think I'm ready for that, well, hey, QuickBooks is a great option, and you can create rules in there. So every single time a certain transaction comes in, it's automatically categorized for you. So you can make it easier on yourself. I don't recommend it if you're anything other than just a side hustle or a one-man show or a one-woman show, right?
Yeah.
If it once you start hiring a team member, just get the accountant, because as your business grows, you want your team to grow. So not just the people that are actually out there doing the work, like administrative assistants and accountants and lawyers that are going to protect you from lawsuits and litigations and stuff like that. Insurance agents, right? And I want to make sure you have a great insurance agent in case anything goes wrong, you're protected. I just don't want you to get the little ones that feel left out, because you may be little now, but that's not where your end game is. Like, be raising your prices, be valuing yourself, and be providing a service and help to clients that is actually beneficial and that people are going to appreciate paying for. I've never ever had somebody work with us and paid the higher price and regretted it. Okay. But I hear so many regrets about the other way. They hired someone cheaper and now they regret it. Like, man, I wish I wouldn't have did this. Like, and I'll keep this short, but we actually had an incident where a lady had us out there for a quote. We quoted the job at 6,100. She got some other quotes, found a guy that would do it for 4,500. Okay.
Yeah.
9 months later, this lady calls me. This fence is in disarray. The gate's dragging. The guy's not calling back. Things are warped. It looks like crap, right? So I go out there, take a look. Well, I had to charge her $3,800 to redo the gate because the gate was completely jacked. So to avoid paying $6,100, she paid $8,300. Now that stung, but
Yep.
that really stung. But instead of, she just took that on the chin and she said, you know what? I understand. I made a mistake. It was my fault. I went with the cheapest bid. Now I'm going to pay you guys whatever you're going to charge to come fix this gate. Okay. And that, now, does that make me feel good that we had to charge her that much for that little of a job? No. And we didn't do it to inflate it. It was just, hey, we have a daily minimum, and that's all it is. And then we're making the gates properly, and we're having the right guys come out there to do it, so she doesn't have this problem again. Right. So it was worth it for her. She never regretted it. She was super thankful, left us review and everything. Right. But she tried to save a couple bucks, and it really burned her in the butt, and it really cost her almost double. So keep that in mind. Cost versus price. Make sure you guys are talking to your clients about that, your team about that, right? So just want to throw that little tidbit in there right before we wrap.
Yeah. And that goes in anything, not even just in business. I know, I just went through that trying to save $99. Went through hell.
Oh yeah.
Literally.
Being cheap is expensive.
Dude, luckily, my lady hooked me up for free, but I know why she did that. Because I'm going to her. I switched where I spend my money at 3 different places. It's just all going to go to her. I rave about her. I, wrote my review. She was smart, very smart. But yeah, trying to me, and I'm like, dude, $99. What? Why was I trying to be cheap with $99? And sometimes, guys, you're paying for the expertise of the person. You could find someone that's a few months new, maybe a few years, or you can work with someone that's 10 years in business. That makes a huge difference when it comes to price and costs and things of that nature. But,
Yep.
and
Yeah, you're paying for the experience.
yes, and to touch on the QuickBooks, you can actually get the basic one, and then you can pay for them to come on like once a month with you for like $30 or $60, I think it was. I've used that before with the QuickBooks, like an accountant to jump on with you, like an expert. So,
Yep.
yeah. But anyway.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys were able to get a lot of value from this. I know there's a lot of things and we talk about these things and so openly, and we give you this advice because we went through it, right? We had to pay the stupid tax because we didn't know, right? And then we learned, and now we want to give this value back so you guys don't have to make those same costly mistakes, and then you guys can really hit the ground running and start your business structure correctly. So if you got any value, just like MJ said, please drop it in the comments. Drop any kind of questions or concerns or maybe even topics that you may want to see in the future. Go ahead and drop those in there, and we read them all. We'll respond to them all. And if you got a great topic, maybe yours will make the cut for the next episode.
Yes. And we will see you next week with a new topic. We're not sure which topic yet, but we'll be here.
Yep. You got to stay tuned to figure out what it is.
Yes.